Hi, Girl Scout sisters. How did you like that video entitled 15 Unbelievable Animals That Saved Other Animals? I thought it was great. Happy Saturday and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our troop series called Zoom with an Expert. My name is Giraffe California, and I am here with my senior Girl Scout troop from Northern California. We are thrilled that you decided to spend your Saturday with us. Today is all about learning all about animals with Girl Scouts from around the country. Here's my animal. Her name was Chloe, and I love her a lot. During our event today, entitled All About Animals, we will cover steps from the following badges: the Brownie Pets Badge, the Junior Animal Habitats Badge, the Cadet Animal Helpers Badge, and the Senior Voice for Animals Badge. We are sure to have a great time. Between the content offered today and the handout we emailed you through the Evite, you will have covered the badge steps for these badges. Isn't that exciting? I know I'm excited. Give me a thumbs up if you are excited to learn something new about animals today. Me too. Here is my thumbs up. Ooh. Okay, it's my honor to introduce you to and hand you off to my friend and Girl Scout sister, Dawn.
Thank you, Giraffe. Hello, my Girl Scout sisters. My name is Dog California, and I'm so excited about today's Zoom with an Expert. I love animals. I have two cats named Levi and Max, and I'm excited to learn more today from our expert. Like Giraffe, I'm excited you chose to spend your time with us today. We are sure to have a great time. In true Girl Scout tradition and fashion, we are going to recite the Girl Scout Promise and Law. Let's do it together. Please raise your right hand and your middle three fingers with me. On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. I will do my best to be honest and fair, friendly and helpful, considerate and caring, courageous and strong, and responsible for what I say and do, and to respect myself and others, respect authorities, use resources wisely, make the world a better place, and be a sister to every Girl Scout. That was great. Thank you for joining me. Okay, my Girl Scout sisters, it's time for me to hand you off to my friend and Girl Scout sister, Sloth, California.
Thank you, Dog. Hello, my Girl Scout sisters. My name is Sloth, California, and I'm so excited about today's Zoom with an Expert. I also love animals, and I have a cockatiel, and his name is Franklin. He is a beautiful bird, and I love to listen to him sing. I have the great honor of leading you through the Pledge of Allegiance. Please see the flag on the screen. Please put your right hand over your heart and join me. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was great. Thank you for joining me. Okay, my Girl Scout sisters, it's time for me to hand you off to my friend and Girl Scout sister, Cal.
Thank you, Sloth. Hello, my Girl Scout sisters. My name is California, and I'm so excited about today's Zoom with an expert. I also love animals. I have an Australian Labradoodle named Brandy. She likes to cuddle and go on runs with me. I'm going to go over a few Zoom rules. Most of the rules are found in the Girl Scout Promise and Law we just recited. Please respect yourself and others during this session, and everyone should have a great time. Rule number 1 is to have an adult with you the entire time. You should not be participating in this event without a safe adult nearby. Rule number 2, please use the Zoom chat feature if you have any questions. If you have a question, you may send a direct message to any of us Girl Scout seniors. Rule number 3, put your Zoom on speaker mode. This will allow you to better see the instruction during this event. You should do that now. Okay. Rule number 4, get to know your reaction buttons. We will ask you for a thumbs up during several parts of the session. Using your reaction buttons, show me a thumbs up right now. I'll do it too. Thumbs up. Perfect. Awesome. Everyone gets it. Also, we will ask you to use your raised hand function if you want us to slow down a little bit. Using this reaction, show me your you raised hand. I want to raise my hand too. Perfect. Good job, everyone. Rule number 5. Please change your Zoom name to your favorite animal plus your state. For example, my name is Cal, California. This is to protect your privacy, and you can go ahead and do that now. Okay, and rule number 6. Let your family and anyone in your house know when you have your Zoom video on. This event will be recorded, and we will be taking pictures and screenshots as indicated in the invitation. If you don't want your picture shared, please turn off your Zoom video camera. Rule number 7, you may leave to use the restroom if you need to. You do not need to ask. Rule number 8, learn a lot and have so much fun. Okay, my Girl Scout sisters, it's time for me to hand you off to my friend and Girl Scout sister, Monkey.
Thank you, Cal. Hello, my Girl Scout sisters. My name is Monkey California, since we all just changed our Zoom chat names to protect our privacy. I'm so excited about today's Zoom with an expert. I am an animal lover. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats at home, and I love them to pieces. My dogs are Mocha and Luna, and my cats are Mango and Beans. They are funny when they wrestle each other and play together. I love to sleep and cuddle with them. Beans sleeps with me, and Mango keeps me company when I do homework. Do you have animals? Go ahead and send me a message in the chat box. What animals do you have and what are their names? I'll give you girls a few seconds. Someone, dog, Wisconsin, I think, has dogs. Addison has a dog named Beans. Cow has 2 cats, Sammy and Milo. A cat named Willow. 1 dog, Little Man. I love that. 2 dogs, Zoe and Tucker. Let's see if I can get more. 2 cats and a Flemish giant rabbit. I used to have a rabbit, but then we had to give her away because we couldn't take care of her anymore. So sad. Cat Fluffy. Oh, you don't have a pet. It's okay. You could probably get like a fish or something if you can't like get a dog or cat. 1 cat, Oliver. These are a lot. Those are a lot of animals. I wish we had more time. I can't read all these animals and names. I'm glad we have so many animal lovers here. That was fun. Okay, my Girl Scout sisters, it's time for me to hand you off to my friend and Girl Scout sister, Kat.
Thank you, Monkey. Hello, my Girl Scout sisters. My name is Kat, and I also love animals. I have a cat named Lucky. We rescued him, so he is so lucky. Our troop introduced the concept of the Zoom with an Expert series during COVID to help girls all over the country earn badge while sheltering at home or Girl Scouting at home. Even better, this series allows us to bring female leaders, experts actually, to engage and share with Girl Scouts their knowledge and passion. It's a win-win for everyone. I hope you enjoy as much as I do. Because my animal name is Cat, and I have a cat, and my favorite animal is cat, I'm going to make myself into a cat right now. I'm going to draw on a nose and whiskers. Like that. Voila, I'm a cat. I encourage you to explore your inner animal. Okay, my Girl Scout sisters, it's time for me to hand you off to my friend and Girl Scout sister, Fox.
Thank you, Kat. Hello, my Girl Scout sisters. My name is Fox, Rhode Island, and I'm also excited about today's Zoom with an expert. I also love animals. I have a dog named Sarah. She's a miniature pinscher, and I love to sleep with her and have her on my lap when I watch movies. I get the honor of introducing our expert for our Zoom with an expert series. Our guest speaker is Dr. Rachel Limar, DVM, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Rachel Limar has lived in Santa Rosa with her family since 1968. She's a graduate of Texas A&M University's College of Veterinary Medicine and has been in practice since 1983. Dr. Limar brought Northtown Animal Hospital in 2011 from Dr. Brown. The practice burned down in the fires of 2017. Since then, she has been helping her clients by doing house calls, borrowing space at a local practice in the Canine Activity Club. After almost a year of searching, Guardian Pet Hospital and Northtown merged. Dr. Lamar looks forward to many more years of helping the Sonoma Country residents with their four-legged family members. When not at work, she is an avid St. John's Sharks fan. They are a professional hockey team and likes to travel to NHL hockey stadiums with her husband and son. We are so lucky to have her here with us today to share with us her knowledge and passion. Thank you, Dr. Lamar, for joining us today.
Okay, I'm Rochelle Lamar. I have a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree, also an Animal Science Bachelor's and a Veterinary Science Bachelor. Just to kind of wrap up the intro, my practice burned in the Tubbs fire that you may have heard about a couple of years ago in Northern California. And we are now in a brand new building. We got back in June. So being resilient and flexible is a great trait to have. So let's get on talking about animals. We'll touch first on pets a little bit. There are different kinds of pets, and we've seen some of that in the comments. Dogs, cats, birds, lizards, goldfish, hamsters, rabbits, all of those make appropriate pets. They do need different living spaces and care. They all need basic care, which is somewhere to live, food, water, and appropriate type housing, which is one of the big problems with lizards, for example. They don't get enough vitamin D, so they need special food and lights to provide that. Dogs and cats need somewhere warm, safe, and dry to live. They need food and water and exercise. And birds, for example, really need a well-balanced diet, and often the cages that I see for birds are too small. They need a little more space than what's typically given. And so they need different types of habitats, different food. Birds need to stay warm, as do your reptile species. And dogs and cats need to be exercised in some way. Dogs often by going on a walk, playing ball with them. Cats need exercise too, and laser pointers and toys can work really well for them as also. I think that dogs need 2 20-minute walks a day if possible, or 2 20-minute sessions of activity appropriate to their size and age. Like my older dog, once he got not quite as active, I would roll the tennis ball for him across the living room instead of throwing it with one of those tennis ball chuckers. So those are things that pretty much all of you can do with your pets. The age differences and what you can do with different pets varies. I think around 6 years old, most everyone can help take care of a pet. You may not be on your own with it, but you can certainly do food. You can make sure there's water. You can help go on a walk. And often you can play with these pets in your house. And as you get older, that will change and you can take care of the animals more on your own. Somewhere in the I'm going to say junior high range or middle school, I guess is what they call it nowadays, middle school range, you can be taking on probably 3/4 of the responsibility. And when you're high school, you can be responsible solely for pets to provide for all of their food and housing. And hopefully your folks will help you with the finances of it, but you could even go to the pet store and get their food. The care of each of the animals varies as well. We really don't have vaccinations for like lizards. Some birds do have some vaccinations, but not commonly in the United States. Rabbits, believe it or not, there's a vaccination against hemorrhagic rabbit fever. Dogs and cats are the ones that I take care of on a day-to-day basis, and our dogs and cats need vaccinations. We know that rabies is required by law because it's a potential disease that could be transmitted from the pets to us. So that's a public health standard. Dogs in Sonoma County, California have a little bit different needs than maybe other parts of the country. There are what we call core vaccinations for our dogs, and that'd be distemper, parvo, adenovirus, parainfluenza, and rabies. In my practice, I consider leptospirosis vaccination and also Bordetella bronchoseptica, which is a respiratory disease, as core vaccines as well. So those things are kind of dog vaccines. Cats, they need rabies, upper respiratory virus vaccine, and feline leukemia virus vaccinations when they are a kitten and at least a booster at 1 year of age, whether they're going to be indoor or outdoor. Common sicknesses, what I see a lot of in my practice are gastrointestinal upsets. So vomiting and diarrhea, both in dogs and cats, and those can be from various things. If you happen to have a Labrador puppy, they are the poster child for eating things they should not. And they often get foreign bodies stuck in their stomach and small intestine. Cats get a lot of colds that can be a problem for them. Out here we see foxtails, which are like grass seeds. They get in the eyes and ears and nose and other body parts. And we take care of those all day long during the summer, especially. I saw a hand up. Do I need to answer a question right quick, or are we good? All right. As far as washing and brushing pets, bathing them, I don't bathe my dog unless she's been at the beach or gotten really muddy. Some of my patients have to have baths twice a week because they have skin problems. Brushing, depending on the length of the coat, should be done on a daily basis if you've got a long-haired pet. Like a Persian cat or a golden retriever, those guys need brushing every day. Shorter haired, like my dog Trixie, who is a half Boston Terrier, half pug, she doesn't really need a lot of brushing. She more needs periodically, I just use a damp washcloth and kind of wipe her down, get the dust off and some of the hair off. So that varies. And we touched a little bit on games that pets like. They can be everything from playing fetch to find it, where you take 4 cups and put a treat underneath it, and underneath one of them, and you tell the dog to find it. Cats can learn how to play fetch. They like playing with feathered excuse me, toys that have feathers on the ends of them, and you can get them going and play with those quite a lot. My cat Boots really likes that particular one. So you can also play with catnip toys with your cats. I'm sure you've all heard about catnip. It's a member of the mint family, like spearmint and peppermint. About half of the cats have a euphoric, almost psychedelic reaction to it. It lasts for about 10 to 20 minutes, and then they become immune to it for a little while. But not every cat has that. And if they eat the catnip, it actually causes sedation. If they smell it, it gets to the neuroceptors in the nose, and then it affects the brain, and they get kind of hyper and wound up. Yeah. Cats and dogs and birds and reptiles, of course, have different feeding requirements. If you have a really active dog that needs to eat more than maybe a little Maltese that just sits on the couch and gets petted and doesn't really do anything, a bigger dog, like I see Fox and Tiger Lover has her big dog with her. It's going to eat a lot more than a smaller dog. And basically you can figure out a rough estimate of calories that they need is about 24 calories per pound of body weight. So a big dog, obviously, that weighs 100 pounds is going to need a lot more food than a 10-pound dog. You can give treats in addition to this, but what you're trying to do, just like with all of us, is maintain a healthy body weight. One of the things you can try to do at home is if you have a fist and you clench it and you run your finger like that, if you can do that with the ribs of your pet, that's too skinny. Holding your hand flat and feeling across your knuckles, that's about how their ribs should feel. You should be able to feel them easily. And if you turn your hand over and you push on here, and that's got more flesh on it, so to speak. And if you are not feeling your knuckles and you've got this much tissue over the ribs of your pet, that's probably a little bit chunky. I recommend feeding pets twice a day. They usually need to go out and take a potty break about half an hour or so after they've been fed. And wet and dry food both have their benefits. Dry food tends to be crunchier and sometimes can help keep tartar off. You can leave it out for a cat or a dog who might free feed through the day. Canned food's a little tastier for them. And in older cats, canned food gives them more water so that as they're eating that, they actually meet their water requirements better. So that may be helpful. Or if you have a dog who's had a lot of dental work, some of the older dogs we see have a lot of dental issues and a lot of extractions from their teeth. So those guys need softer food. And how much does it cost to feed a pet? Like my little dog Trixie, it costs about $26 a month or so to feed her. So just not even $1 a day. Now, if Fox and Tiger Lover, that dog's going to eat a lot more food than my little Trixie, who weighs 19 pounds. So that varies depending on a couple of things: which food you're feeding, which pet you have, and what size they are. And if they have medical conditions, prescription diets might be twice what regular over-the-counter pet food would run. So if they need that for a specific medical issue, it can start to be expensive. getting into treats, again, treats are something that I'm pretty sure we all give our pets. Even birds, when I had 2 little budgies, parakeets, I would give them treats, and their treats were in form of seed, because they really should be eating pellets most of the time, but on occasion I would give them seed that they really thought was a big treat. And that works out. Dogs and cats, you can use everything from milk bones and greenies to green beans and carrots for them. And how many treats they can get depends a little bit on the calorie content and how, whether your dog is or cat is chunky. So if they're kind of chunky, then they need something like green beans. And if they're not and they're really active, they can have things with a little more calorie content, like milk bones and such. The one that I sell at my practice that I really like is called a lean treat, and it is 4 calories per little cube. And the little cubes can be broken up into 4 pieces. So you can actually feed 1 little calorie per session. And you're going to be using more treats when you're training. So that's just kind of a given. If you're using something to train them, you may be using more treats. And if they have a heavy treat day, you can cut back a little bit on their food. So I have a quote here that Jen gave me, and it was from the Girl Scout Handbook of 1953. Now that was even before my time, but it has a really good quote in there, which is, it's unfair to have a pet and not take good care of it. If a pet belongs to you, it's your job to keep it well and happy. So that still holds true today, even if, even in 2022, that's a fair statement. And if you guys talk your folks into getting you a dog or a cat, and you agree to help take care of it, then that's something that you're going to need to remember, that this is a 15-year commitment for dogs and cats often. And for some of the parrots, they live as long as we do. So it's a big deal and a big responsibility. And I think this might be a good time to see if there's any appropriate questions for kind of pet basics. So do our senior Girl Scouts have any questions for me? No? Okay, then I'm going to move on a little bit to sort of a next section that talks about habitats and, how can I brush my golden retriever Bailey, and when do I brush him? All right. Well, Bailey has longer hair. You can go get some different kinds of brushes depending on Bailey's hair coat. You probably want something that has a few teeth in it that'll go down through the coat. And you can get that at pretty much any pet store or online. And Bailey should get brushed probably every day, with some special attention to the longer feathery hair at the backs of their legs. So on their front legs and back legs, there's feathers. Let's see. Do cats react the same way to peppermint plants as to catnip? No. Although catnip is in the mint family, they don't react the same way to peppermint as to catnip. How do I brush my Shih Tzu Maui's teeth? Okay, that's a great question. Somebody asked, do I need to brush my cat? And that depends on if you have a long-haired cat or a short-haired cat. Short-haired cats, probably not. Longer-haired cats, yes, they should be brushed daily. So I'm going to take the one about the teeth brushing, and then we're going to move on. So toothbrushing. Really what you're brushing is the gums. So there's the crown of the tooth and there's the gum here, and you are brushing the junction of the crown of the tooth with the gum line. The point of brushing teeth is to keep your gums healthy. And that's the barrier between all the bacteria in the mouth and the blood system. How do you do it? There's a lot of different ways and it takes time. The first thing I'm going to say about brushing teeth is it takes probably 8 weeks to get a pet to where you can really go around all 4 sections of their mouth. And you start by just rubbing your fingers in there along the gums, and you might just do it on the upper arcade. And of course, you don't want to get bitten if you have a dog or a cat who is known for, excuse me, is known for biting. You don't want to put your fingers in their mouth, but you just sort of go around up here with your finger, and then you work on doing 2 sides, and then on 3, and then on 4. Then you can take a washcloth even in water and wrap it around your finger and do little circles. You can graduate to using some dog or cat appropriate toothpaste and doing little circles around. And sometimes a baby toothbrush will work too. So that's how you work up to brushing your dog's teeth. Ideally, they should be brushed every day. And give yourself time. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. It takes probably 2 months minimum to get them to where they'll do that, unless you have a really, really, really compliant pet, Labrador Retriever maybe, who would like, okay, we'll do whatever you want to do, because that's just how they are. I'm going to move on now, and we're going to talk a little bit about wild animals and domesticated animals and some things along those lines, which I think segues into another level of merit badge. They still call them merit badges, right? Yeah. Are merit badges? Somebody shake their head. Dog, do they still call them merit badges?
I think so.
Okay. We called them merit badges back when I was in Girl Scouts. So what's a wild animal? Well, a wild animal is anything that's living in its natural habitat and does not really rely on people to provide it food, shelter, or clothing, or not clothing, food, shelter, and care. So an example would be, a duck in a pond. Now, that's migrating through for the winter. We have some ducks that are domesticated and some that are not, and those are a little bit different. So you have, there are varying degrees of domestication in some of the species as well. So ducks, for example, we have domesticated ducks, which live and are bred by people and provided with food and housing by people. And then we have the wild ones that might migrate through. Sparrows and songbirds are wild animals. So the African elephants kind of cross the line a little bit. They're wild animals that might be able to be domesticated and basically used for whatever the people want them to be used for. A cheetah is going to be in Africa and wild. Now, 2 animals that really have not ever been domesticated well are water buffaloes and zebras. They're very hard to get to be domesticated. So wild animals are similar to domesticated animals, and they're different than domesticated animals. So domesticated animals tend to have been chosen and had specific breeding programs to create the traits that people want. If you were breeding back in, 1,000 years ago, you had dogs and you were breeding dogs to be companions. You would select for friendly, happy, tolerant dogs who want to be around people. You wouldn't pick wolf-like creatures who would turn and attack on you, or who weren't comfortable being in the human habitat. Zebras, for example, you really would rather have a horse species. Horses are something that we have been able to domesticate. Wild animals are not safe to bring into your home, in my opinion, and it's not okay to keep one as a pet. Although there are people who have, tigers as pets, who have skunks and raccoons as pets. I don't really recommend that. And I think that those particular animals are better left in their habitat. They're dangerous, and while you can control wild animals to a certain extent, they don't have thousands of years of being around people and being cuddly and that type of thing. So they end up being dangerous. There was, in Colorado, there were a lot of things on the internet about a lady who brought a bobcat into her house to try, because she thought it was too cold outside for it. Well, bobcats live outside, and they've lived in Colorado for thousands of years, and it didn't end real well for her. And the Colorado Department of Fish and Game actually put out some videos and some things saying, don't bring in the wild kitties, they were calling them. So they are not friendly. They are not comfortable around people. It's very frightening for them. And we often don't provide them with the correct food and habitat. So just don't. An animal sanctuary versus a zoo, they both deal with wild animals, and a sanctuary is keeping a wild animal more in its natural habitat, often with the plan of releasing it back into the wild. Zoos have wild animals, and they use them specifically as exhibits for people. They are, Fox and Tiger Lover said wild kitties. The Fish and Game Department was referring to bobcats as the wild kitties, because this lady brought the bobcat into her house. That was kind of a sarcasm on the Fish and Game Department's part. They were like, leave the wild kitties outside, lady, because she brought a bobcat in. So sorry, if I didn't make that clear, that was sarcasm on the part of the Colorado Fish and Game Department. Zoos put animals on display. Okay, they also may serve a purpose by trying to do breeding programs and keeping some of the species alive. Wild animals are difficult to tame. Some of them may be able to be tamed to a certain degree to where they live with us. Horses are one example. You could get a wild Mustang and acclimate it to using to being around people, and by taking a lot of time and going slowly so you don't scare that individual animal, using food as treats and rewards, talking softly to them is a much better way than just the old Wild West of putting a saddle on them and riding them till they are exhausted. So taming wild animals and training horses are done a little differently than they were 30 years ago or 100 years ago. Now it's more of a positive reinforcement thing. In zoos, they can even train lions to put their arms, they can put their arms through a hole in the cage and let them draw blood from them without the lion getting all upset. And they do that by conditioning that lion to, first put its arm through there and giving it something to eat and doing that over and over. And then they would have it put its arm through and they would just touch it and he'd pull it back. And so same as teaching your dog how to let us brush its teeth, you do it gradually and over 7 months with positive reinforcement. So that's how you can tame wild animals a little bit, or at least get them to do what we want them to do. And Sloth in Tennessee has her hand up. So, and Giraffe in California wanted to know, why did they remove blood from the lion? They were doing some tests like complete blood cell counts and looking at the influence of different foods and things for them. They were doing some medical research, but mostly it was for the animals' health to make sure they were getting what they needed. So just like our doctor sometimes sends us to get blood drawn, that kind of idea. They weren't getting a blood donor or anything like that. But sometimes our zoo animals and the animals that we take care of need to have some blood tests done. Domestication. What does an animal control officer do, and do they help protect animals or people? The primary goal of animal control officers is to help the animals. They do help people indirectly by taking care of stray animals, injured animals. If there was a dog attack, for example, like if you got bitten by a dog, animal control would intervene and impose rabies quarantine protocols and or test that animal for rabies if needed. So in a way, they help the animals, which secondarily helps the people. But their main job is to take care of the animals. And sick and injured animals, for example, they go pick them up. When I did emergency medicine, a lot of times there'd be a stray or a dog that had gotten out and was hit by a car, and they would bring them in to us to get medical attention. They also will remove animals from unsafe situations for the animals abuse, or that somebody's not taking care of them. They've just left them out in the yard on a chain in extreme weather, for example. They'll go get those dogs. And so they help both animals and people, but their primary goal is to help the animals. We get into a little bit about habitat, and habitat is, of course, where the animals live. And adult habitat and baby habitat might be a little different, just like your parents can take care of themselves differently. Or if you have a little brother or sister who's like 1 or 2 years old, they need baby proofing, if you will, so they don't hurt themselves. Often the young animals, they can't keep their body temperature normal. So they need extra insulation in their nest or habitat. And mom and dad birds, for example, they bring grass and twine and twigs and mud and make those make those nests able to control the body temperature of the baby birds when they're out foraging and looking for them. And also they often need to have a parent with them. So the birds, for example, mom bird might go out and find food and dad bird will stay with them and vice versa. So they trade off. Penguins actually, their habitat, they carry that egg on top of their feet under their fur, and under their feathers, kind of tucked up there. And if that egg happens to fall off of the penguin's feet, then it will freeze almost immediately and they won't have a baby penguin. So that's different. Adult habitat is very similar, but you don't have to keep it as hidden and as warm as adults are able to better regulate their body temperature and watch out for predators a little bit more on their own. So any questions about baby animals and habitats and zoos and sanctuaries? Koala in Ohio has a hand up. Okay. We got 5 participants with hands raised.
I have a couple girls sending me questions.
Okay.
Okay, so there's one question here. It says, I have no idea how to pronounce axolotls. Is that? I don't know. Here. Oh, she sent me the axolotls.
Oh yeah, they're really cute.
Oh yeah, okay. She said axolotls are in danger, but people are taking them in as pets. And I read axolotls are hard to take care of. Is that okay?
Well, if you're helping preserve the species, I would say yes, but you need to be really on target and on point with the habitats. So certainly I wouldn't get one from the wild. My dog came to visit. So this is Trixie, and I don't know why. Oh, I know, because the backgrounds. But anyway, say hi, Trixie. All right. Yeah. Bye, Trixie. What were the other questions?
I have one.
Okay.
From Puppy PA, I have a boxer with a skin condition. When should I brush her?
That's a very good question. Now, if she has a skin condition, you may just want to wipe her down with a damp washcloth. And you might see your veterinarian and get some mousse or some of those things. Boxers don't need a lot of brushing. Boxers have pretty short coats, but your veterinarian may ask you to bathe that boxer or put special skin products on there up to once a day. So not so much brushing, because that can be traumatic for your boxer skin.
I have a question.
Anything else right quick?
I have one from Chloe. Chloe asked, is it okay to take in a red panda as a pet?
No. Red pandas really shouldn't be used as pets. They should stay in habitats and areas where people can take care of them. All right, I'm gonna move. Is it true that there's an animal called a liger? Yes, it is true. Okay. we're going to move on. Keep your questions. Maybe we'll have room at the end, but I've got quite a bit of material to cover, and this material, I could probably do 2 hours on every one of the topics that I was asked to talk on. So we're gonna carry on. Animal classification system. Have you guys heard of that before? Yeah, okay. So it starts out with a domain, and then a kingdom, and a phylum, and a class, then an order, then a family, then a genus, then a species. And the point of this is to look at similarities and differences between different animals. And, you know, there's mammals. We all know what mammals are. And then under mammals, there's different kinds, and they have different genus and species. So, you know, Canis lupus is a wolf, for example. So it's a way to order things so that you can look at the biology and set them up with differences versus similarities. So there you go. What makes an animal endangered? We're going to talk a little bit about endangered species, and that might go to the red panda issue. When animals become endangered, of course, there aren't very many of them left in their natural habitat. And that can happen. Usually they become endangered as a result of people. I mean, people kind of purposefully and accidentally, and just a result of more people, have compromised a lot of the habitat and the animals. Some of the animals have been hunted to extinction. Some of the animals have lost their habitat because we have encroached upon it, just building cities and taking over more and more and more acreage in the world. Some of it has happened in the Amazon. A lot of the trees are being cut down to have farmland. And that's a problem. So when they lose their natural food, they lose their natural habitat, they lose their natural climate, they can't survive. If they're being hunted, they can't survive. If everybody shot every bobcat that they saw because they were afraid it would get their cat, bobcats could end up endangered, for example. So a lot of the extinction events and endangered events have come about as a result of people. And we can do a little bit about that. This gets into some of the concept of being green. There's, for example, toilet paper that's made out of bamboo instead of trees. There are things that we can do, walk more instead of using our cars so much. We can try to have a smaller footprint. If you go out hiking and those kind of things, you can leave no trace and be aware that you are in the animals' habitats and not in your own house. Carry your trash out, you know, leave no trace, be careful with fire, all of those things that I'm sure you guys are learning in Girl Scouts. Those will help. Recycling. So, you know, now we have the 4 R's. There's reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot, which is composting. You separate food scraps out. All of those things will have impacts. If you use 1 paper towel instead of 2, you know, you turn the water off while you're brushing your teeth, all of those things help. So being ecologically conscious helps. If you would want to support some there are a lot of organizations that are working towards helping endangered animals. Some of them are a little more extreme than others, but you can make donations. You can not have red pandas as pets, that kind of thing. And we talked about what ruins habitats, deforestation, trash, pollution. All of those are examples of things that ruin the habitats of the animals. Now we're going to go into a little bit more, I'm going to call it intellectual things now, and ethics. We touched on basics, we touched on some habitats, and now we're getting into things like, do animals have feelings and that type of thing. And yes, animals have feelings, and that philosophy has changed in the last, I'm going to even say 40 years. I've been a veterinarian for close to 40 years, and the thought processes and the way that we do things has changed dramatically. You guys who have pets, you know they have feelings. You know they're happy when they see you. They're you know, they get sad and upset when you leave. They like seeing their friends. They have feelings. They may not be exactly the same feelings as ours, but they definitely have feelings. And there are some nice research studies recently that talk about that. And the relationship, yes, so somebody just commented that cats purr when they're happy. Yeah. Cats also purr when they're nervous, and it helps self-soothe them. Think of a Linus with his blanket that he rubs and carries, Charlie Brown's Linus. You know, cats can purr to try to relax themselves too, but they definitely have feelings, and they get scared, they get happy, they get sad. In my patients that I see, some of them even grieve. I mean, like if one of the, if somebody's had two dogs and one of them passed away at age 15, the other one's pretty upset. And, you know, so yes, they have feelings. And the relationship between animals and people have changed dramatically over the last years. When I graduated from veterinary school, there was a philosophy back then that you didn't control pain the way we do today in animals, because it would keep them still and help, and then they wouldn't injure their incision lines and things like that. Now that is like absolute hooey, and we manage pain very aggressively in our companion animals. Animals, you know, have been domesticated over the years. Cavemen, I think, probably started trying to get pets happening. And over the years, what I'm going to talk about is the attitude towards animals, from being just put here for us to do whatever we want, to something that we have a huge responsibility for, and are more stewards and guardians of. We've changed the way that things are done. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But yeah, and animals are important to people too. We all know that having our friends here it can help lower blood pressure. It can make us happier. It can reduce stress by having our pets here. Trixie decided she needed to come give me some TLC here. While I'm talking to you guys, I think maybe she picks up that I'm a little nervous because she didn't usually come sit in my lap quite like this. So animals are important, and animals have helped during a lot of different things in our history. You know, we know about using dogs in the military. We know about the cavalry and those horses that have helped us in wars and situations. We know that we never would have gotten the west part of the United States colonized as quickly without covered wagons that were pulled by oxen and things, or with horses and cattle. So they've helped us a lot. And we also have a responsibility to take care of them. So rescuing animals is something that we can do, taking them out of a bad situation and giving them a good, loving home, or an appropriate home for them, is very important. Rescuing them can take them out of a abusive situation. It can take us out of a hoarding situation, which I've been involved in the past, where a lady had like 40 cats in one house, and it was not well maintained. So rescuing them is putting them somewhere safe, where they can live a nice, happy, normal life, where they're taken care of and not be in a situation that is not safe for them. And as I touched on a little bit, there are animals that help us do different things. There's military dogs, there's cavalry horses, there's search and rescue dogs. Search and rescue dogs can go help find people who are lost or injured, and they are scent dogs. So they go out and find people. They can help you when you're nervous, talking to a bunch of Girl Scouts by coming and sitting on your lap. But there's also a lot of other things that are being done with animals. For example, they're being trained to help people with seizure disorders to know when they're going to have a seizure. They're being trained to help diabetics learn when they have low blood sugar or high blood sugar. They can benefit deaf people by alerting to when the doorbell or the telephone rings. I worked with Canine Companions for Independence, and they trained service dogs for people who were deaf. They trained service dogs for people in wheelchairs, and those dogs would help pull the wheelchair. They would pick things up from the ground, because if you're in a wheelchair, you can't just bend over and pick things up. They would open the refrigerator for people. They could take the money to cashiers and bring the sandwich or whatever back to the person. They do some really amazing things. And that's pretty cool. And of course, the seeing eye dogs, we've seen those forever. And guide dogs for the blind, one of their headquarters is just a little bit away from where I live, and they do amazing things. And they all have special regiments or regime. I guess a regiment, but training. There are special trainers for all of those dogs who teach them what they're supposed to do. Oftentimes they have puppy raisers, so the people will take them until they're about a year old and teach them basic commands: sit, down, stay, like that, and socialize them so that the dogs are used to seeing different things in the community. And then they go into an exhaustive training exhausted training session. And after the dogs are trained, the person who's going to get the dog comes in and does an exhaustive training session with that animal as well. And then at CCI anyway, they had a big graduation. And if you were a puppy raiser, you would go to that graduation and get to see the dog who you helped raise graduate with their person. So that was really cool. And those are actually trained dogs. The emotional support dogs is sort of something that sort of irritates me a little bit. We all know that dogs and cats are emotionally supportive. They do not, however, have the same training as service dogs. Service dogs can be trained for psychiatric disorders and for people with PTSD and who are going to have seizures and things like that. But they are different than the people who just decide, I'm going to get a little vest for my Maltese and make it be a service dog. Emotional support dogs often aren't trained and socialized to know how to behave themselves in public situations. So that's one of my kind of hot buttons a little bit, is they bring these emotional support dogs into doctor's offices and stuff, and they pee on the floor and try to bite people and such. So I'm not saying that those people don't get comfort from their emotional support animals. I just am saying that they don't have the same level of training as service dogs. So oftentimes they kind of mess things up for the people with real service dogs. And as far as emotional support animals, most of the time they are smaller breed dogs or cats. I know we've probably seen in the news, somebody had a peacock that was their emotional support animal, and they tried to bring the peacock on the airplane. And of course, the peacock didn't have the faintest idea how to behave on an airplane. So that was kind of a mess. So smaller breed dogs and cats, I think, work best for that. There are some larger breed dogs. Pit bulls actually can be really, really well-behaved dogs for emotional support. And I touched on the people with disabilities, guide dogs, canine companions for independence. They have those. So that's sort of my 2 cents on service dogs, how animals work with people and such. Are there questions on that section?
I have a question in the chat.
Okay.
It asks, it's from Dog Florida, I believe. It says, can someone who is autistic get a dog to help them? Yes.
Yes, they can. And so there are emotional support animals. There also are dogs that are being trained to assist individuals with certain disorders, like to sit on or be some autistic people having close inanimate objects or a pet kind of give them a hug type thing. So yes, autistic people can get dogs. They can get just, a pet to be with them, but they also are training dogs to work with autistic people and individuals with PTSD. Anything else? If I am going to be a vet, I have one that somebody just popped up here. If I am going to be a vet, do I have to pay vet bills? Yes, I still pay vet bills. I don't have to pay for my exam or my service per se. But I still pay for supplies and vaccines and all of those things. Yes. And you have to pay for school, which young individuals getting out of school right now often have debt of $300,000 to $500,000, which is a lot. So, yeah.
I have one
Okay.
from Koala, Ohio. How often should I brush my shortish haired Pom Yorkie?
You know, once a week to daily. So they have a little bit of longer hair. You especially want to pay attention if they've got feathers on the back legs, and keep all of that detangled. It's kind of like, how often do you need to brush your hair? Well, when I had waist length hair, I needed to brush it a lot more than now, because now it doesn't get all tangled. So I hope that answers that question.
I also have one from Dolphin, California. Why are they not training cats?
They do. Well, there were some cats that we tried to train at Canine Companions, mostly to be deaf persons alerts. It didn't work out quite well. Cats are a little bit more difficult to train to do things, but you know, cats can be trained to do a lot of things, a lot of tricks, and a lot of shows. I was at a place and they had a bunch of cats that they did a whole show with. They climbed up, they walked across tight ropes, they went down things, they went over things, they fetched things, they got a lot of treats. So they can be trained, but they are harder to train than dogs. It's less consistent. Okay. Sloth in Tennessee, if you have a question, type it in the chat so the senior Girl Scouts see it. Okay. Same with Fox and Tiger Lover.
I have one from Dog New York also. My
Okay.
aunt has a very active dog. What types of toys are best for her dog?
Plain fetch with chew toys is always a good one. So that's a great thing to do with them, to play fetch. There also are some dogs who like to compete in agility trials or dock diving and things like that. So if you're really into it and you wanted to train them to do some of those specialized activities, and those are good ones too. Fly ball, where they run down, they catch a ball, they hit a timer and come back with it. So there's a lot of fun things, but fetch is a great one. Fetch is a great one.
I have a
Okay,
question.
I'm gonna move on now because we still got a bit to go. How do scientists work with animals? So that's kind of a controversial topic. There are various ways that scientists work with animals. Some of them are to test drugs and treatments that are going to be coming out for people, and they want to basically have mammalian species that they try them on first before they try them on us. There are cosmetic testing, which hopefully is falling out of favor and getting less and less, where they put, you know, different pharmacy or different cosmetic problems in rabbits' eyes, and they test shampoos and stuff using that, which I think is kind of awful. And they also, scientists can train animals to recognize things such as melanoma in people. They have trained rats to scent landmines, but a lot of it has to do with drug protocols and pre-release of drugs that might be used on the human side, is a lot of that they're doing. So following that line, there are animals with special skills. So like I touched on the rats and the landmines. They have trained rats successfully to go out and locate landmines, which is a big problem in some of the war-torn areas, that the landmine fields are just left there and there's no map to them, and they're blowing up civilians, and kids are losing legs and things like that. But with rats, they've trained them to alert and to find the landmines, and the rats are often not heavy enough to set them off. So that's really kind of cool. There have been goldfish that are used to find pollutants in waters. There are other things that I think are just amazing, like octopuses who can change their colors and blend in with their surroundings. Geckos have things on the pads of their feet where they can crawl up walls and crawl on the ceiling. They can stick there. Animals, they have so many amazing things. I mean, just looking at a hawk can find a mouse with its visual acuity and eyesight from hundreds of feet up in the air. I mean, and it can fly. I mean, how cool is that? So some of them have very special skills. Some of them can be used with to help us, but I think that being able to color change and camouflage yourself, and but I've really got to say that being able to fly is one of the coolest things I can think of. I think that in the future, we're going to have more animal friends doing more things. They're training dogs to be able to sense or smell COVID. I think dogs are going to be able to sense cancers in people. I think that we're going to have more of a synergistic relationship with animals in the world, hopefully soon. Yeah, but being able to fly, I think, is one of the most amazing skills. And we're getting into some ethics things now, such as, do I think that animals have rights? And what rights do they have? What rights should they have? And how have animal rights changed over time? Well, I touched on a bit of that. Now we don't just look at them as dumb animals, right? We know that they have feelings. We know that they have needs. We are becoming aware of the destruction of their habitat, and that our lives become less rich when they're not in our lives. There are differing rights for animals in different areas, and it's very hard to I think, did I just disappear myself? There we go. I think it's very difficult to impose animal rights in areas where there is abject poverty. So if you're in Africa and you can't feed your kids, you really don't care about saving the animals. So I think that animal rights is something that's important. I think it is more of a civilized nation that's relatively well off. And that's our responsibility to provide that, and to help provide ways for people in other areas to take care of themselves and the animals. So animals in the United States, for example, and there was a wonderful video, by the way, in your ancillary resources about animal rights in India, which was just kind of amazing. I think that they may have better animal rights laws than we do. But the animal rights have in the United States changed dramatically, and they have the right to humane treatment. They have right to being treated with kindness, provide food and water and shelter to all of them here. And there are areas where animals are used, such as rodeo and horse racing and dog racing and some of those things where those rights are starting to change. But in general, animal rights currently, is that they're supposed to be provided with food, water, shelter, and not being abused. Now, the what is animal abuse is a big topic. Like if you look at puppy mills in the Midwest, where those dogs are kept in little dinky cages where they can barely turn around, I don't think that's humane. And the issue, some of it is the issue of being enforced and the community's way of thinking about their philosophy about animals. In the United States, we have issues such as, treatment of rodeo animals, treatment of racing animals, treatment of puppy mills. We have hoarding situations where, like that lady who had 30 cats in a one-bedroom apartment, that was not okay. Wasn't okay for her, and it wasn't okay for the cats. And there are states that are now banning things like declawing cats, tail amputations, and ear cropping, which I totally agree with. Declawing cats has been done for years and years, but it wasn't done with appropriate pain control. And it's the equivalent of cutting off cutting off this digit of your fingers here, 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 and here. And there wasn't proper pain control, and I don't really think it's necessary. So that's something that I think that we need to change as far as laws so that we can protect them. I don't think we should be in the UK. Cropping tails and cropping ears has been banned, and I really don't think that it's necessary, and we should get rid of that. And so one of the questions on here was commonplace actions that could be considered inhumane, and I touched on declawing, tail cropping, ear cropping. Shock collars was on here, and I think shock collars have a very, very, very specific niche where they can be used appropriately, and it's not by Joe average person who just buys it at the store. And shock collars have advanced to where they give a warning signal and a vibration before a shock. So there may be places where that could be used, but it's not by you or me or anyone I know at this point. It would be inhumane to use that on a pet. So yeah. Fostering pets, that's taking them out of a situation where they don't have appropriate care and giving them a home with love and attention and food and water and shelter, while their forever home can be found. It also is done with the Canine Companions for Independence and the guide dogs from the blind pets that go into service training. So you'll have puppy fostering. And why do folks do it? Because they want to help the animals is why they do it. They often get great joy from it, and they get great joy for helping find that pet a forever home. So that's pretty cool. I work with some organizations here locally who have foster people and see them when they come in to the veterinary practice and help take care of those foster animals. And they're usually pretty excited. And there is what we call foster fails too, which is where I've decided it's foster fusion instead of foster fails, because they didn't fail. They just like that foster pet so much that they keep it. So we have a few of those where, yeah, they started out, they're going to just foster it for a month or two, and they have adopted it finally. So that's pretty fun. I touched on a little bit about medical testing, and is animal testing regulated, and is it regulated federally or by the state? And it depends on the state. Sometimes it's regulated by both. There are federal guidelines that all of the labs have to adhere to, but they're not always, I think they need to do better. I think we need to do better with medical testing on animals. And there are some really good places and some not so good places. And the really good places provide excellent habitats and things like that for the animals. But part of the reason that we use animals in medical testing is because we don't want to try it on your brothers or sisters or mom and dad without knowing what's going on. Pet cloning. Why do people do that? I don't know. I don't get it. Pet cloning is not commonplace. Pet cloning and animal cloning, I think that the technology perhaps has some benefits if you wanted to try to institute the same animal over again. And usually those are exceptional animals that have won a lot of awards or have been an outstanding racehorse or something like that. So you want to duplicate them. It is not commonplace. And there is a huge issue around cloning. There are a lot of, genetic research on things, cloning, all of those get into a lot of ethical questions. It is not commonplace though, and it's expensive. So somebody, what is livestock breeding? Okay, livestock breeding is not as controversial as cloning, but livestock breeding basically is crossing your specific sires or dams to create a genetic outcome that's desirable. Dairy cattle, for example, you want them to produce a lot of milk. Beef cattle, you want them to put on a lot of muscle mass. Chickens, you might want them to lay consistently all year long and not have downtime in the winter. And it is how do farmers choose different animals to breed you, and how does it improve the herd? Oftentimes they look for, well, one thing is that they can buy cattle like a bull or a cow that has the kind of phenotype and genotype that they want. Phenotype or looks. If you have a mare that you want to produce colts that run fast, you're going to pick a stud that has won a lot of races. If you want a colt that is good for cattle, then you're going to pick a good cutting horse dad. And there's so much behind all of this. And improving herds, you want to reduce illness, you want to increase whatever kind of product that your end game is, whether it's beef or dairy or lamb, for example, or sheep that have really good wool. So you would pick your sire or dam to exemplify those characteristics. And in livestock breeding, you generally are trying to produce a better product. Domestic pet breeding is very similar. And domestic pet breeding, you want to have a dog or a cat that works well for their breed type and that is friendly. You want them to be free of genetic defects. And there are a lot of specific genetic defects in dogs and cats that you don't want to breed those particular individuals if they have them. And responsible pet breeding has to do with making sure that mom and dad are well taken care of and not just stuck in little cages. You want to provide them with good veterinary medical attention. You want to make sure that the puppies have good nutrition. And it's pretty much the same, whether you're breeding cows or dogs. You want the end result to be a good quality animal that does what you want it to do. So responsible pet breeding to me is not a lot of litters, taking care of the litters, letting mom have breaks, making sure you have finances. French bulldogs are a big deal right now. Almost every French bulldog has to have a cesarean section to deliver those puppies. And the people come in and complain about how much it costs for a cesarean section. But they want to sell the puppies for $5,000 a piece. It's kind of irritates me a little bit that they're breeding animals that can't even have a litter naturally. So there we go. I'll get off of my soapbox a little bit, although now we're going into, is it okay to have animals in a circus, a theme park, and do they have a good quality of life? I don't think circuses need animals anymore. I think it's been pretty well documented that they do not have a good quality of life. Theme parks might be a little different in that it depends on the theme park. If they have an appropriate habitat for the animals, they have enough area to move around to, you know, and it's an appropriate habitat that isn't something like a concrete box with a water pail and a food pail, that's not cool. If they have an area where it's outdoors and they can amble around and there's trees and shade and maybe a pond for them to get into and things like that, where they're happy and they're socialized with their other animals as appropriate, then they can have a good quality of life. But there are a lot of terrible zoos and theme parks out there right now that people are working to change. And we're going into rodeo and horse racing. Rodeo treatment has changed considerably in the last 30 years, but there have to be extraordinary steps taken to make rodeo animals perform. Most of the horses and the bulls would not buck without external devices like flank straps wrapped around them without pain inflicted upon them in some way to make them buck. And they get hauled all over the country. I just, while it's legal currently, I don't think it is humane the way the animals are treated in the rodeo. Now, that's my personal opinion. And if I had a rodeo cowboy as a husband, I would have a different opinion. If I still lived in South Texas, I might have a different opinion than in Northern California. So this is a controversial topic, but currently across rodeos, horse racing, movies, all of that, there have been huge changes to regulate those industries and sports to make it more humane. And that's happened fairly recently within the last 30 years. Horse racing, I think that the horses are very well taken care of until they're not. So when they quit being a star athlete and quit making money, they are often sent to the slaughterhouse. So as long as they're doing good, they're treated like royalty. And when they're not, they're out of there. Animals in movies are very well regulated in the United States, and those, the Humane Society and their animal trainers and all of that. I'm not so worried about the animals in the movies as I am about horse racing and rodeos. Their care is indeed regulated pretty strongly. So careers that help animals, there is everything from somebody who works as a clerk in the World Wildlife Federation's front office to veterinarians, to park rangers, to zookeepers, to ranchers, and to maybe National Geographic's photographers who bring the beauty of those animals to us so that we realize what we want to have in the future. So helping animals, there can be a lot of ways to do it. It may be that you want to go volunteer to be a dog walker at the local Humane Society. You can become a veterinarian or a veterinary technician. There are exotic animal careers, zookeepers and things of that nature. And maybe you could go on a volunteer trip someday to help spay and neuter dogs and cats and be one of the support people who goes down to Mexico, or like I did and went to Peru to help spay and neuter dogs and cats. So there are a lot of ways. Of course, I chose veterinary medicine instead of being a rancher like my grandpa, or, that was my way to help animals. My favorite animal advocate. So I have two of them. one of which is a gal named Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin is a professor. She is on the autistic spectrum. She has invented devices for people with autism. But what she's done that is an animal advocate is that she redesigned slaughterhouses to be less frightening for animals. So she made huge changes in the way animals who are going to the slaughterhouse are handled. And whether you decide to continue to eat meat or not, she did a lot to change the way that they're handled beforehand to be more humane. My second favorite animal advocate is a veterinarian named Sophia Yin, Y-I-N, and Sophia Yin was a behaviorist who started to advocate fear-free handling and positive reinforcement and made huge inroads in those areas. She also brought to the forefront veterinarians have a huge suicide rate. It's 3 times other medical professionals, and she committed suicide. So her death started a huge movement called Not One More Vet, and support groups for people dealing with emotional issues in veterinary medicine. So let's see. What do I think my biggest animal issue is, or what do I think is the biggest animal issue? And if I had to change one law on animals, what would it be? Oh boy. That was a real tricky one, and I've struggled with that ever since Jen sent me the invitation to this. One of the things that I think needs to be addressed still is how we handle our livestock that we grow for food. And I think that oftentimes they aren't treated quite like they should be. So I would advocate for, and in California, it's happening a lot. For larger areas for the animals so that they can move around and go outside and not just be stuck in little cooped up cages. So changing laws about animals so that they have an appropriate amount of space would be my one at this point. So there we go. And now I think we got just barely time for questions.
I have one question from I don't know how to pronounce the name, but how do you help an animal with depression?
How to what?
How to help an animal with depression?
With depression, I think some of it is the same way we help people with depression, trying to get them to engage. Activity, physical activity is important. Access to sunlight and outdoors help. And then if need be, there are mood altering chemicals, think antidepressants. There are antidepressants that can be used for our dogs and cats too.
I have a question in the chat.
Okay.
From Zebra, it says, what qualifications does one need to meet to get a service dog? And where can I find resources for the service dog?
I think that varies from institution to institution. It depends on what kind of service dog you're looking for. Obviously, you know, if you were blind, then guide dogs for the blind. If you are in a wheelchair, Canine Companions or the Bergen Institute would be where you would start. And I am not familiar with their whole application process and how they choose people, or if there are fees associated, but you know, there are different organizations for different types of service dogs. And you know, Google is your friend. Sometimes nowadays you can find those things online. Anything else?
There is one more that says, how do you train cats to fetch?
Oh, well, some of them do it naturally, okay, but you can also have like their little favorite treats and toss the little toy or ball, and if they go play with it, you give them a treat, and then you kind of just a little ways away from them, you hold a treat, and if they come over to you, you give them the treat, and then after you do that, you get them to where, oh, they need to bring the toy over to get a treat. And then you can back away. So positive reinforcement and patience, lots of patience. And some cats just do it naturally. My son's cat plays fetch, and she just figured it out. She was like, oh, human throws the ball. I like the ball being thrown. Bring it back to human. They do it again. You know, so, and some cats, they're never going to learn how to fetch. I don't think I would ever be able to teach my dog how to fetch because she's just not hardwired that way. But positive reinforcement and time is the way to do it.
And then there was another question from Zebra that said, you mentioned a fun fact about goldfish. How do goldfish check for pollutions in water?
They've used goldfish in areas where there are potential what are called xenobiotics, which basically is a bunch of stuff that's not supposed to be in the water. So medications, cosmetics, phosphates from detergents. And what they do is they put the goldfish in some of the water and just see if the goldfish gets sick. So if the water's fresh and clean, the goldfish stay healthy. So that's how they do that.
I have a question in the chat box. Someone was wondering, what was your favorite animal you've ever worked on?
Oh, my favorite animal I've ever worked on. That's a great question. And wow, there's a lot of them. One of the most memorable ones that I ever worked on was when I was doing emergency medicine, and there was a macaw that came in, and the macaw had eaten a bottle of Advil. So I took the macaw to surgery, and we had to open its crop in the neck, get the Advil out, and sew everything back up, then give it some activated charcoal and fluids and all of that. And it all went really well, but the next day the avian veterinarian called me up and he said, thank you for saving this bird. And I was like, well, of course, I hope everything works out well. And he says, oh, it is. And apparently that bird was worth $30,000. And I about had a heart attack when I found out I was working on a $30,000 bird. But I love my dog and cat patients. They're just so, every one of them, they're special. I have one little pug who writes me love letters when he comes in and brings me treats all the time. And, you know, he's fun. His name is Newton. And Newton always writes me thank you notes for taking care of him. And I love them all. It's hard to pick. It's really hard to pick.
I have another question.
Okay.
It says, can other animals, other than dogs and cats, be service animals?
No, I'm sure that there are some that have been, but not typically. Yeah, not typically. But I mean, you saw in the video that was playing before we got started, monkeys can help with a lot of, you know, they're rescuing things out of wells and, you know, but some of the other species have some illnesses that make them kind of not ideal. Okay. All right, senior scouts, are any more questions?
I think that's it. Thank you,
All right.
Dr. Lamar, for your time today. This was incredible.
I agree, Kat. I learned so much. This was great. Thank you.
Congrats everyone for earning the badges today.
Yes, congratulations. Please be sure to look for the follow-up materials via invite.
Also, be sure to follow us on Fun Patch Programs on Facebook to be first to learn any of the new free Zoom with an expert programs.
Before we go, we are going to sing a traditional Girl Scout song called Make New Friends.
Oh, I know.
Before we sing, I want to say thank you for coming today. I hope you learned a lot and had a great time. Now I'm going to ask everyone to unmute and sing along with me. Hi.
Say hi.
Hi.
Hi. Ready for a song?
Okay, I'm ready.
Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other gold. Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other gold. Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other gold. Keep the old. One is silver and the
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for
Goodbye.
teaching us about animals.
Bye.
Thank you for teaching me about animals.
Of course.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Thank
you.